So if you're improvising on the blues, whether it's a 12-bar blues, an 8-bar blues, and you feel like your soloing is kind of aimless or kind of noodly, or you're just playing the same things over and over, I want to suggest two things you can do right away to fix that. And they both involve looking ahead and thinking about where you're going to land, rhythmically, like where you're going to land in the next bar, and what note of the scale you're actually going to land on. That's all you need to do, and it is amazing how much of a difference that can make without learning any new licks or developing any new chops. Okay, so the first of these two things is to think about what beat you're going to land on. And this may not be something you've thought about at all, but the easiest thing you can do to start fixing the way your solo sound is to start thinking about playing into the downbeat of the next bar. So instead of thinking like, oh, I'm on E, I'll start playing. If you think I'm about to be on E, and you play before you get to the E, that starts to sound like you're playing towards something, and that creates momentum and a sense of expectation as you go there and a sense of satisfaction when you get there. So if you just can think about, for starters, playing on and 4 and 1, it's a really simple way to start thinking about this. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1. Whoops. Now I'm using the changes to the standard treble in mind because it changes chords every bar. So unlike a 12-bar blues, which like sits on the one chord for like 4 bars, or at least a couple of bars, if you have a quick 4, and it sits on the 4 chord for a long time, blah, blah, blah. A tune like Treble in Mind is a great exercise or a great practice piece for this idea because you're changing chords every bar. You're going from 1 to 5, back to 1, and over to 4, right? Everything's moving, and then 1 to 5, and then a lot of things can happen in the last 2 bars, but typically you'd play some kind of turnaround, which is basically 1 up to 5 again. So these, I'm just taking one simple kind of phrase, this one rhythm, this and 4 and 1, and I'm just using the blues scale. So the first thing is that rhythmic destination that you're going to land on the downbeat. But obviously the other thing is like, what note are you going to land on? And one of the simplest things you can do in this department is just to land on the root of the chord that you're going to. So if you're going to E, land on an E. If you're going to B, go to B, open second string, back to E, and then when you're going to A, land on an A. Now, that's a good starting exercise. Obviously, you might want to land in more places than that, and you might want to change up these rhythms a little bit as well. But as a starting point, it's very hard with improvising to really feel like you can practice it, right? Because how do you practice something spontaneous? And the answer is to find this middle ground between something memorized and something completely made up. And if you can do these kinds of exercises where you practice having some constants, like I'm going to play this rhythm, I'm going to land on this note, then you can have some variables inside of that. Like you don't have to start with this lick. You could start with or, right? And you don't have to use the same lick to get into every chord. So even if we just have 2 licks and this one, well now, to necessarily land on the root of A either, because we can land on another note that's in the chord. And this E is in the chord too. It's the fifth of A. So you can start to mix these things up. And of course, you could mix up the phrasing as well once you get comfortable with this idea. Instead of just playing and 4 and 1, you could play phrases that start even earlier and still come out to resolve on the next downbeat. So you could play and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, for instance. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. You could even shorten things to just play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So just 4 and could be the answer to that. And so there start to be these different kinds of developments and call and response and flexibility within this very specific thing that you're trying to do. So if you're feeling like you only have a few licks that you know and that work, or if you haven't even been able to wrap your head around improvising at all so far, these kinds of building blocks and tools can really provide a bridge between, say, playing just fixed, memorized things or just playing off of tab and being able to improvise the way that you want to. This is something that I teach all the time inside my membership, the Fingerstyle 5. So if you're interested in a more organized, ongoing way to start learning how to improvise, or just in how to strengthen your right hand coordination, how to start learning more tunes and building your repertoire, or how to start turning those tunes into more complete arrangements with intros and endings and all that kind of stuff, I encourage you to check out my membership, the Fingerstyle 5, at the link below or the link on screen. Right now and for the next couple months, we're going to be working on the 8-bar blues, Trouble in Mind, in the key of E. So if you've enjoyed the kinds of things I've been talking about the last few lessons, this might be a really good time for you to check it out. If you've got a question or comment about today's lesson, please leave it down below. I would love to hear from you. And as ever, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.